For more on the summer hotspots for Chinese tourists, I'm now joined from Philadelphia by travel expert and founder of TravelPulse.com, Mark Murphy. Welcome to the program.
Nice to be here.
So this is what's really interesting to me about the story we just heard. With all of the instability and presence of terror groups in North Africa, why are more Chinese tourists going there?
Well, take Egypt. You cannot see what Egypt offers without going there, and the mystique of North Africa as a whole is incredible. I also think that Chinese tourists are weighing what's happening in Europe, especially in Western Europe, against traveling to Africa. And I think they're looking at that, depending on what location they choose, as a safer bet these days, at least in their minds. And I think that's one of the things that's driving that. The other thing that's driving it is, you mentioned wanderlust, right? Chinese travelers want to travel. There's 100 million of them that want to travel, and they've been to Europe in many cases, and now they're looking to go to other places and what you would consider more exotic places. And Africa is a natural, given some of the bilateral agreements that have taken place there between China and a lot of African countries.
And of course, the other thing that's at play here is that places like Morocco and Tunisia, we just learned, are giving visa exemptions. Is it the incentives or this wanderlust you're talking about, the idea of something new that they haven't seen before that's part of the draw?
Well, I think the wanderlust is definitely a key driver. But being able to easily travel between countries is an unbelievable boost to those countries. I'm really shocked that more countries don't realize how powerful it is to ease visa requirements, because that is such a hindrance. You just heard in the last segment an increase of 30% in travel to some of the countries in North Africa because they've eased the visa restrictions. That's common sense. And as long as you have that in place, that's great. If you force the Chinese traveler to go to the local embassy, to go through the process, you are going to kill tourism. And I think we see some destinations in Africa in particular that are seeing that right now.
Are we already beginning to see African tourist destinations sort of cater to Chinese visitors, whether it's with translation or special foods, things that might make their experience particularly comfortable?
Yeah, I think all of the above. One of the nice things is the Chinese travelers that are going overseas, many will speak English, but in many cases they're traveling with families or a group, and some of those folks may not be English speakers. So if you're going to go on safari and you're going to have a guide, let's say in South Africa, you want them to speak Mandarin. You want them to be able to communicate with those folks to give them the full experience. So I think you're going to see a big demand on the ground to cater more and more to the Chinese tourists. You're going to find that you're going to have many more Chinese-speaking guides in these locales, and that's going to be critical for the success of the tourism, because we think of infrastructure as physical infrastructure. This is infrastructure in people that allow you to welcome the Chinese travelers. Now, here's the one caveat I would say for those Chinese travelers. It's great that you can have Chinese food if you go to Africa, if they cater to that. But when you travel, make it a point to try to get outside your local custom and experience much more of that particular indigenous culture, which is one of the reasons why you should be traveling. And I always encourage folks to do that.
So Mark, back to the business side of this, I love the travel advice too there. European travel companies, they're not waking up to this yesterday. They must be looking for ways to reattract the business they're losing, but can they overcome what you're describing as this fear of terrorism that Chinese visitors have?
Well, the good news is everything goes in cycles and everything changes. The US has been hit, other countries have been hit. What we find is that the traveler, once there's a lull, understands that the odds of them dying in their bathtub this year are about 20 million times greater than their chance of actually getting attacked and having an incident when they travel overseas, as long as they go to established destinations or emerging destinations where security is in place. So I think when you put a rational perspective on it, the answer is yes, they're going to go back to Europe and other places. But if I've already been to Paris, I've already been to London, I've already been to Italy, now I want something else. And we're seeing that with the American travelers as well. They're going to more exotic destinations, emerging destinations. Africa's an emerging destination, and with the accessibility of the air carriers and nonstop service, let's say between Beijing and Joburg, now you have access to all of South Africa. That's the door opener that drives the tourism business, and those nonstop flights are key.
Analysis and tourist tips coming your way from Philadelphia, and Mark Murphy, our thanks to you.